Shine Campus, Sunday Strength. I hope everybody's doing well. I hope you guys are having a good day and that you've had a good week. Just as a reminder, on Monday mornings, I do a little book club reading, and it's Money Monday. So that's our focus is something with building that. You guys are welcome to join that. And then on Tuesdays, I do a coffee in the morning time with me where we're just kind of hanging out and chatting. And lately, I've been picking a topic and just posting that up and making sure that you guys get some more goodness. So those three things are going on and have been going on in Shine Campus, and they're there for you guys to have what you need and to take what you need as much as possible. Um, so the other pieces that I want to try to look at today, there's a couple of things. One is I want to encourage you guys, no matter what it is that you're going through or whatever the struggle is, and there's different things going on. We see some natural disasters going on at different times, and whatever it is that you're going through, do your best to push through those things and to stay focused on being who you need to be, being where you need to be, and trying to keep the right focus and attitude as much as possible. It is not easy, right? Whether it's somebody in your life, whether it's something in your life, like all a lot of things cause challenges, and it's up to us to really stay focused on being what we need to be for our own lives and to keep the peace in our hearts that helps us to move forward in a useful way for ourselves and for the people around us. So, the topic that I wanted to talk about today is really about us being able to focus on something that happens, I think, for a lot of people, which is you get into your relationship and you think, I cannot do this alone. And if this person doesn't come along with and start buying into some of the things that I'm doing and that I'm working on, then we're not going to be able to do it for very long. And so you end up breaking up, but then you jump into the next relationship and it ends up being the same thing, and at some point in time, I think you come to a conclusion where you say, man, either I can't do relationships or I'm just not capable, or I can't meet the right person, or all those things go in our mind. And I don't know that that's as true as often as we make it seem like it's the truth. I think a lot of times it's less likely to be the case. So what is it? Well, I want to start this out with a quote by Viktor Frankl. And Viktor Frankl says, everything can be taken from a man, but one thing, the last of the human freedoms, to choose one's attitude in any given set of circumstance, to choose one's way. So if you think about something, there there isn't uh, there isn't something that has to necessarily stop you from creating a good relationship. But I do know something that stops us from creating good relationships a lot of times is all the things that we've been through in our past. So that's informing our way of being in a relationship that isn't necessarily useful to the relationship that we're in. So those things add up and start creating a lot of doubt about what we are doing in our relationship. And so I think what happens is you start getting in a cycle of behaviors that lead to one outcome, and that outcome frustrates you, and you may be able to calm down from that situation, but then eventually it's going to cycle back because you're still doing the same kind of behaviors that got you to that previous outcome. So now it just becomes a cycle, and then as you continue to do that, um, there's no solution, or it feels like you're going in circles. And so for both people in the relationship, whatever behaviors that we're doing, it's what's getting us to the opposite of what we want. And that might be oversimplifying your circumstance, but that's the truth. Like, you end up in a scenario, you're getting something that you don't want, and you keep going at it the same way. And so there's a biological reason for that, or an inside reason for that. And the inside reason for that is that as we are creating anxiousness in each other for whatever reason, and it doesn't necessarily just have to be you, it could be a combination of things. But as we're creating that anxiousness, it makes us hesitant. And that hesitant doesn't produce the closeness that we need in our relationship. So that makes us struggle, because instead of us being able to hold on to each other, we keep our forearms up, or we're constantly trying to protect ourselves from how that person is approaching us, or protecting ourselves from experience a certain kind of thing in the relationship or in and out of our relationship, and it makes it complicated. So if you realize this is what's going on, I think it becomes a little bit more helpful. But you have to ask yourself, well, what stops me from doing a different behavior then? What makes me think that the behavior that I'm doing is going to be helpful to creating a different outcome, right? And you could say, well, this behavior worked before, right? So like when you're dating, maybe the behavior works, but now that you're not dating, the behavior doesn't work anymore. What has changed? Well, what has changed is a relationship elevation starts to ask you to do different kinds of things. Personal development and personal growth asks you to start doing different things. And as that's happening, people start changing in those scenarios. Well, if we stay with the mindset, well, I've always done this, and so I think that things should go the same way, then you're going to be stuck. You have to go back to that quote that I talked about, which is, says that actually the only thing that you really have that can't be necessarily taken away, even in moments of change, is the idea of your attitude towards whatever is going on, right? And then your ability to choose your own way with that situation. And so the hope is, and the reason why you might be listening to this, is that you're choosing a relationship. And if you're choosing a relationship, then you have to start redirecting your behaviors. So instead of us starting to think like, man, I cannot do relationships, or this person that I'm with will never change, or we are not compatible, or whatever the scenarios are that make you dismiss your ability to really grow a relationship, if you're able to do something different than have those thoughts, then you start creating something good in your own life. And that's what I really want you to have. So what does that look like? Well, what that looks like is challenging yourself to start doing things in a new way, right? Now, we're not asking you to be outside of your own personality, but if you know that in your relationship, certain things create a certain kind of outcome, right? If I already know these, I know exactly what's going to push my wife over the limit, or I know exactly what's going to get my husband to a point where we're not vibing together. If I can figure those things out, if I can look at those things, what are the opposites of those behaviors, right? And so that might be an easy thing, and you might feel like, well, I already do enough, or I don't have to do enough, and that's where I would hit the brakes, because it's that kind of thinking that actually stops us from producing the results in the relationship that we want to have. So the first step that I would tell to you is prioritize your relationship in your mind. And that doesn't mean like if you're doing 20 things, move it to number one. It just means like, I'm going to do my relationship no matter what. If you can start in your mind saying that, I'm going to do my relationship no matter what, as the first step, and making that the most important thing, it's going to change how you start approaching your relationships. Okay, so then that becomes, now that you know that that's your item, that's the first thing that you're going to do, can you start aligning your behaviors with that? What am I going to do to create goodness in my relationship? Does that mean that I have to start thinking about things differently? And again, if we're in the wrong mind frame, we might take that to a place that says, well, I'm going to expect less of the person that I'm loving, right? That might not be the case. Maybe you expect more in a certain area, or you allow them to, you start knowing that, man, that my person is good enough, right? You allow them to start being good enough. Maybe you start seeing what their value is instead of saying, I have to expect less. Because whenever we start seeing more of what their value is, it starts growing them into more of what's needed in the relationship. And I don't know what that is for any specific relationship, but if we were paying more attention to that, then it makes us less critical in our own minds, if we're not saying it out loud, but it makes us less critical, which means that we're able to put more relationship effort in and more relationship energy. That means goodness, right? So this all starts with the mindset. And that's our biggest challenge, is we sometimes can't get past the moment or what the behaviors are. And we put behaviors in a certain scenario that we're saying, this is an unexcusable, we can't get past this type situation behavior, right? And I'm saying the best way to get a different kind of behavior is for us to be able to switch it in our mind and start interacting in a different way that propels goodness that can move us closer together. The more you build on the connection in your relationship, then you start actually getting all the things that you want, because two things happen, I think. Two things happen. One is, if I'm connected to somebody, I want to make those things happen, right? So you as partners, if you're connected, you want to try to seek out, like, what's the thing that I could do to serve you best, right? And then the second thing that happens is your moments don't get taken away with not peace. So if every time there's a cycle of, like, we're doing this behavior, and then we get the outcome that we don't want, that's just a cycle of that continuing scenario that we don't want to be a part of. Meanwhile, all of that was opportunity for us to start building on the goodness that we could have in our relationship. So can you switch over in your mind first the idea that says, look, I need to somehow punish, or I need to somehow teach this person, or I need to somehow create a different scenario that means that this person needs to listen to me, otherwise it won't go well? Can we do away with that thinking and replace it with, I have to start actually being who I need to be in this relationship, that doesn't create apprehension, or that doesn't create not peace. I have to start being who it is that I need to be in this relationship, so that I can have peace in my heart. And a lot of times, us getting peace in our heart means that we can't stare at what other people are doing, right? We have to really focus on how we're building that for ourselves. So I know that there's another question that goes with this, because I've worked with couples on it. And the question is, well, Thomas, if I'm working on myself and they're working on their selves, well, how do we ever come together? And I'll leave you guys with this concept. If you're really working on yourselves, and if that's true, the highest version of us wants to be together. So it's not a separating mechanism. It just means that I don't need to be responsible for somebody else, or I don't need to have an energy leak by going to somebody else and saying, like, hey, you're not doing what you're supposed to be doing, or you're ruining our relationship, or somehow you need to be better, right? I don't need to go to somebody else and do that, because I can trust them. And that's part of what grows our relationship. I trust them that they're working at their rate at the best of their ability. Will they be? I don't know, but that's not up to you to decide. You're just leaking energy at that point in time, right? But if two people are, and when two people are, then you start moving closer together, and you'll be able to feel that in your relationship. It goes away when we start trying to hold each other accountable, or at least when we try to punish each other for not being where we need to be at. So it's super useful if you're able to see it, right? Don't try to find a way out of it. Try to find a way in it, right? And it may not seem like, and I think this is the case with a lot of things that are not familiar to us. It may not seem like that's the way to go about it, because it's so foreign to what we've been doing. But what we've been doing is causing the calamity, right? So if we're able to cycle back to this and really work hard at, how do I develop an opening for connection in my heart? How do I develop connection in my relationship? And I stay focused on that. That's going to bring me closer to my person. So the higher version of us, as we're working on ourselves, actually gives us the ability to be closer to each other. So there won't be a scenario, if we're working on ourselves, that says, I got better and they got better and we split apart, right? That's not happening. That's not going to happen, right? Now, if we are working towards splitting apart, then that might be the case. But if we're not, if we're saying, look, I want to be better in my relationship, and I'm really going to focus on that, and the second person says, hey, I want to be better in my relationship, and I'm really going to focus on that, well, we get better. And I don't need to focus on what the other person is doing to fix that, right? And if you think about the opposite of that question, because the question usually comes like, Thomas, if we focus individually on ourselves, how do we ever come back together? Well, if you're focusing on somebody else, is it helping us to be together, right? Like, as I focus on somebody else and what they're doing and what they're not doing, is that helping us, right? Most likely not, right? Otherwise, we probably wouldn't even be having this conversation. So the question for you is, am I going to switch over in my mind what needs to happen and how I'm going to approach that? We have tons of things to be able to help you at theshinecampus.com. If you have any questions for me directly, please reach out and I can help you with figuring out how all of that happens. All right, you guys, enjoy your Sunday, and we will talk to you soon.